The Assassin's Creed franchise has been hiding philosophical secrets, rewritten history, and ancient conspiracies in plain sight for almost 2 decades. Today I'm breaking down the craziest Assassin's Creed theories that might actually be true. And we're starting with one that changes how you read every single game. The Creed's true meaning. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. Most people hear that and think it means chaos. No rules, no consequences, do whatever you want. And honestly, that's exactly what the Templars want you to think. Here's the thing. The Creed's motto isn't about nihilism. It's a philosophical doctrine about free will. Nothing is true means the structures of society, the hierarchies, the so-called natural order, are all constructed. They're not absolute. Everything is permitted doesn't mean everything is acceptable. It means the responsibility for every action falls entirely on you. That reframe changes everything. The assassins aren't rebels fighting for the sake of fighting. They're guardians of human autonomy. Every hidden blade kill, every Brotherhood war comes down to one belief. Nobody gets to decide what humanity does except humanity itself. And this isn't fan speculation. The motto functions as a direct counter to every Templar control scheme across the entire franchise. Free will versus control. That's the whole series in 5 words. But if the Creed's meaning is hiding in plain sight, wait until you hear what's been hiding inside Altair's own name, Son of No One. Altair ibn Lahad. Most players hear that name and never think twice about it, but translated from Arabic, it literally means son of no one. And that's not just a cool title. It might be hiding an entire family secret in plain sight. The obvious reading is that Altair was an orphan. His father died when he was young, his mother died in childbirth, so son of no one feels like a tragic label. Case closed, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Ibn Lahad functions as a laqab, a traditional Arabic title or surname passed down through a family line, and the game actually confirms this. Altair's son Darim inherited the name. That's not how orphan labels work. You don't pass down. I have no parents to your kids like a family crest, unless it was never about being parentless at all. The theory suggests Son of No One was a deliberate Brotherhood title, designed to erase identity and enforce anonymity. You can't track a lineage that officially doesn't exist. You can't target a family that calls itself Nobody. It's operational security baked into a surname. And Revelations actually undermines the orphan reading directly. There's a memory sequence where Altair introduces himself as Altair, son of Umar, openly acknowledging his father by name. If Son of No One was literal, why would he contradict it himself? The answer is he wouldn't, because the laqab was never a description. It was a disguise, a family tradition of hiding in plain sight passed from father to son, embedded in the very name that players have been reading wrong for over 15 years. But a hidden name is nothing compared to what some Templars were allegedly doing behind the scenes in colonial America. Colonial Templars. Here's something that'll mess with your head. The Templars, the guys who are supposed to be the villains of the entire franchise, might have actually helped free slaves in colonial America. Let me explain. A theory floating around the community suggests that certain Templar cells operating in the American colonies actively assisted escaped slaves and even aided Native American tribes. And before you dismiss this as some kind of Templar apologist nonsense, hear me out because it actually makes strategic sense. The Templars have never been about mustache-twirling evil. Their entire philosophy revolves around order and control. And sometimes, the fastest way to gain control in a region is to destabilize whoever's already running it. Helping enslaved people escape? That weakens rival colonial powers. Assisting indigenous tribes? That creates loyal allies in territories the Templars want influence over. This isn't charity, it's chess. And here's where it gets interesting. This pattern isn't unique to colonial America. Throughout the entire franchise, the Templars repeatedly act in ways that seem benevolent on the surface, but serve a deeper strategic purpose. They fund hospitals, build infrastructure, support revolutions, not because they care, but because every act of generosity is an investment in future control. The theory doesn't make the Templars good. It makes them complicated, and honestly, that's way more terrifying than a straightforward villain. But if morally gray Templars bother you, wait until you hear what's hiding inside the DNA of every assassin who's ever lived. ISU-DNA. Here's something that changes everything about how Assassin's Creed works. Every impossible leap of faith, every time a protagonist shrugged off a fall that would shatter a normal spine, there might be a canonical explanation hiding in their blood. The theory is simple. Assassins carry significantly higher concentrations of ISU DNA than regular humans. First civilization genetic material is what makes them superhuman. Before you dismiss this, the games basically confirm it with Desmond Miles. Desmond had more ISU DNA than almost any human alive. The only people with more were sages. those rare individuals who are essentially reborn vessels of Isu consciousness. That elevated DNA is exactly why Desmond could wield the Apple of Eden without losing his mind. Normal humans who touch that thing get controlled, manipulated, destroyed. Desmond picked it up and used it like a tool. But here's where it gets interesting. If Desmond's bloodline carried that much Isu material, then every ancestor he relived through the Animus had it too. That's not coincidence. That's a genetic through line stretching thousands of years back to when the Isu and humans first interbred. It would explain everything. Eagle vision, Isu sensory perception, inhuman parkour, enhanced physicality, resistance to pieces of Eden while Templars get mind controlled, genetic immunity from the first civilization itself. The community has pushed this further, arguing the Brotherhood unknowingly self-selected for high Isu DNA over centuries. They recruited the most agile, perceptive, and resilient humans they could find. Generation after generation, those traits concentrated. The Brotherhood wasn't just a philosophical order. It was accidentally a breeding program for Isu hybrids. If that genetic theory unsettles you, wait until you hear about someone who might have been reincarnating for thousands of years. Eve Reborn. Here's a theory that sounds absolutely insane until you actually start connecting the dots. Some fans believe that Eve, the original Isu human hybrid who helped lead the first rebellion against the first civilization, never truly died. Instead, she's been reincarnating throughout history, showing up again and again in different bodies across different time periods. And one of the most popular candidates for her modern incarnation, Evie Fry from Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Before you dismiss this, hear me out. Eve is one of the most important figures in the entire franchise. She and Adam were the first hybrids, the first humans to resist Isu control, and essentially the founders of everything the Assassin Brotherhood would become. That's not a small legacy. That's the foundation of the entire war between freedom and control. But here's where it gets interesting. Deep lore analysts have pointed out that Eve's story never actually gets a proper conclusion. She appears in fragments, visions, and cryptic references, but the franchise never confirms what happened to her. Some theorists believe that's intentional, that Eve's consciousness or genetic signature persists through specific bloodlines, resurfacing in key moments throughout history. The Evie Fry connection comes from more than just the name similarity. Evie is positioned as the more ideologically driven twin in Syndicate, obsessed with pieces of Eden and Isu artifacts in a way that feels almost instinctual rather than learned. There's even speculation about a physical artifact, a blood vial that could serve as the mechanism for this kind of transfer. Nobody at Ubisoft has confirmed this. The theory lives entirely in the space between what the games show and what they deliberately leave unsaid, but the franchise has a habit of planting seeds decades before they bloom. And speaking of Isu figures pulling strings from the shadows, the next theory involves one who didn't just manipulate history. She manipulated Desmond Miles into committing murder, Juno's puppet. Everyone remembers the moment Desmond killed Lucy. It's one of the most shocking scenes in the entire franchise. Your character, the guy you've been playing as, just stabs one of his closest allies. No warning, no build-up, just a blade through the stomach. And for years, fans accepted the surface explanation. Desmond lost control. The apple overwhelmed him. It was a tragic accident. But here's where it gets complicated. A massive portion of the community believes that wasn't an accident at all. The theory states that Juno, the Isu entity who had been quietly pulling strings from the shadows, actually programmed the Apple of Eden to force Desmond's hand. She didn't just influence him. She literally hijacked his motor functions and made him execute Lucy because Lucy was about to betray the assassins and defect to the Templars. Think about what that means. An ancient god, thousands of years dead, reached through a piece of technology and puppeted a living human into committing murder, not through persuasion, not through manipulation, through direct neural override, and the evidence lines up uncomfortably well. Juno had already demonstrated the ability to communicate through Isu artifacts. She appeared to Desmond multiple times before this moment. She had motive, because Lucy switching sides would have disrupted everything Juno needed for her eventual return, and Desmond himself showed zero intent to harm Lucy before touching the apple. The scariest part? This wouldn't even be the last time Juno tried to control humans through Isu technology. Her entire modern-day arc revolves around using artifacts and worshippers to claw her way back into a physical form. But if you think one dead god manipulating people is unsettling, wait until you hear about the one who might still be watching from the other side. Minerva's true role. Everyone assumes Juno is the big bad of Assassin's Creed. She's the power-hungry Isu who tried to enslave humanity, manipulated Desmond, and spent thousands of years scheming from inside the Grand Temple. And yeah, she earned that reputation. But here's the thing, some fans think we've been watching the wrong Isu this entire time. Minerva might be the real threat. Before you dismiss this, hear me out. Minerva shows up throughout the franchise positioned as a guide, a helper, the Isu who warns Desmond about the solar flare and points humanity toward salvation. She's framed as the good one. But if you actually pay attention to what she does versus what she says, the picture gets uncomfortable. Minerva doesn't just deliver warnings, she withholds information, she manipulates timelines, she appears at critical moments, drops cryptic half-truths, and then vanishes before anyone can ask follow-up questions. Every single interaction she has with a human protagonist involves her controlling exactly what they know and when they know it. That's not guidance, that's manipulation with better PR. And fans have noticed a pattern. Minerva's interventions consistently serve Isu interests first and human survival second. She warned Desmond about the flare, sure, but she also knew Juno would be released if he activated the eye, and her alternative was letting billions of people die. She presented two terrible options and then let a human make the impossible choice. That's not heroism. That's a chess move. The community theory goes further. If Juno was the obvious villain, Minerva is the subtle one, the kind who never gets blamed because she's always technically helping. Fan theory lists have been elevating her to secret antagonist status for years, and honestly, the evidence is more compelling than it should be. Now, if a secret Isu villain sounds concerning, wait until you hear about an entire faction of humans who willingly worship one. The third faction. Everyone talks about assassins versus Templars like it's a two-sided war. It's not. There's a third group operating in the shadows that most players have completely forgotten about, and they might be the most dangerous of all. They're called the Instruments of the First Will, and their entire purpose is worshipping Juno, not serving the Templars, not fighting alongside the assassins. They answer to an Isu god, and they've been collecting pieces of Eden to bring her back to power. Here's where it gets complicated. The Instruments aren't just some fringe cult mentioned once and forgotten. They show up in the Uprising comics as a fully operational faction with agents embedded inside Abstergo itself. Their mission in that storyline is to acquire the Koh-i-Noor, which is arguably one of the most powerful pieces of Eden in existence because it can locate other pieces of Eden. Think about that for a second. One artifact that acts as a radar for every other artifact on the planet, and these people almost got their hands on it. The comics follow Elijah, Desmond's son and a sage, alongside Charlotte de la Cruz trying to stop the Instruments from pulling this off. But the real question fans keep asking is whether the Instruments actually disappeared after Juno's story concluded, or whether cells of them are still active in the modern day, quietly collecting artifacts nobody's tracking. Because here's the thing, organizations built around religious devotion don't just dissolve when the object of worship goes silent. They go underground. They wait. And the Instruments had infrastructure inside the world's most powerful corporation. Most players never touch the comics, which means most players have zero idea this faction even exists. And that's exactly how a shadow organization would want it. But if a secret Juno cult sounds wild, wait until we question the very technology that makes this entire franchise possible. Is it a time machine? The Animus is supposed to be a simulation. That's what Abstergo tells you. That's what the assassins tell you. You're not actually going back in time, you're just reliving genetic memories stored in your DNA. Simple enough, right? Except nothing about the Animus has ever been simple. Here's the thing. If the Animus is purely a memory playback device, then why does desynchronization exist the way it does? When you deviate too far from what your ancestor actually did, the system doesn't just glitch out. It actively rejects your input. It forces you back. A simulation would let you wander off script and fill in the gaps. But the Animus behaves like you're tethered to something real, and the system is preventing you from breaking it. Fans have argued for years that the Animus functions more like a temporal link between present and past. You're not watching a recording. You're observing events as they unfold, and desynchronization is a safeguard preventing you from altering history. The Animus lets you look, but it won't let you touch. But then Layla Hassan's modified Animus changed everything. Her version started interacting with Isu consciousnesses, accessing memories from people who weren't even her ancestors, communicating across time in ways that shouldn't be possible if you're just reading DNA data. Some players believe Layla's Animus didn't push the boundaries of the technology. It broke them entirely, and if it broke them, the boundaries were real. The past wasn't a reconstruction, it was a destination. Nobody at Ubisoft has definitively settled this debate, but the implications are massive. If the Animus is even partially a time machine, then every session any character has ever had was contact with the past. And if the Isu knew that technology would eventually exist, they could have planted messages and instructions designed to activate when someone finally plugged in, which means the Animus might not just be reading history, it might be the reason history happened the way it did. And speaking of rewriting history, the next theory cranks that idea up to 11, because fans believe the Assassins and Templars didn't just witness major historical events, they orchestrated them. Basim's secret. Basim ibn Ishaq might be the most dangerous character in the entire Assassin's Creed franchise, not because of his combat skills, not because of his brotherhood connections, but because he might not even be human anymore. Here's the theory. Basim is a reincarnation of Loki, the Isu, and everything he's done across multiple games is part of a calculated revenge plan that's been unfolding for thousands of years. And the scary part? The evidence is overwhelming. In Valhalla, players discover that Basim carries the consciousness of Loki within him. He discovers an Isu temple beneath Alamut and a prison that once held Loki himself. His personal tragedy, losing a son, mirrors Loki's mythological grief so precisely that fans immediately connected the dots. But here's where it gets complicated. In Mirage, we see a younger Basim, and narrative director Sarah Bolo explicitly stated that Basim in Mirage is not the same Basim as in Valhalla. That's a developer going on record to say, these are functionally different characters inhabiting the same body. Think about what that implies. If the Basim we meet in Mirage doesn't yet know what he is, then every interaction, every mission, every relationship he builds is happening while a god is slowly waking up inside him. Players who noticed Basim's strange behavior, his obsessive focus on certain artifacts, his cryptic reactions to Isu symbols, they weren't imagining things. Those were breadcrumbs. Multiple independent community investigations converged on the same conclusion. The Alamut Temple discovery, the prison detail, the personal loss paralleling Norse mythology. All of it points to Loki using Basim as a vessel to escape Isu imprisonment and reshape modern events. Some theorists even connect Basim's presence to Layla's Animus experiments, suggesting he's been influencing the Grey, the digital space between simulations. The franchise has never had a character operate across this many timelines simultaneously. And if the theory is correct, Basim isn't just a protagonist. He's a ticking time bomb that Ubisoft has been building for years. But if an ancient god hiding inside an assassin sounds insane, wait until you hear what fans think the Templars did to JFK, Houdini, and the moon landing. Assisted assassinations. Here's where Assassin's Creed stops being a video game and starts feeling like a history textbook written by a paranoid genius. Because according to the franchise's own lore and the fan theories built around it, some of the most famous events in human history weren't just influenced by Templars and assassins. They were orchestrated using pieces of Eden. Let me explain. The JFK assassination. Fans have long theorized that the Templars used an apple of Eden to project a hologram on the grassy knoll during the Kennedy shooting. That's right, the second shooter wasn't a person. It was a projection from a first civilization artifact designed to create confusion and cover the real assassin's tracks. And before you laugh, remember that apples of Eden canonically create illusions. That's literally what they do. Projecting a fake gunman isn't even the craziest thing an apple has done in this franchise, but it doesn't stop there. Harry Houdini, the greatest escape artist who ever lived, supposedly possessed an apple of Eden. That's how he performed his impossible tricks. Not skill, not misdirection, Isu technology. And when the Templars found out, they had him killed. His death from a ruptured appendix after being punched in the stomach, conveniently timed, to say the least. Then there's the moon. The theory claims the Templars placed an apple of Eden on the lunar surface, which reframes the entire space race as a Templar retrieval operation disguised as national pride. And Hitler? According to this corner of the fandom, the Assassin Brotherhood killed him while he was attempting to obtain a piece of Eden. The official story of his bunker suicide becomes a cover narrative written by the winners. Now, none of these have been explicitly confirmed by Ubisoft in the mainline games, but the franchise has always blurred the line between real history and Isu manipulation. And if rewriting individual historical events sounds insane, wait until you hear the theory that the Templars let an entire apocalypse happen on purpose. Planned extinction. This is the theory that makes every other entry on this list look like a bedtime story. If it's true, it rewrites the entire modern-day storyline of Assassin's Creed. The claim is simple. The Templars knew the 2012 catastrophe was coming. They didn't try to stop it. They built underground bunkers, sealed themselves inside, and deliberately let the solar flare wipe out the majority of humanity. Not because they failed, because that was the plan. The Assassin's Creed franchise has always established that the Templars want control. Abstergo has virtually unlimited resources. They've been stockpiling pieces of Eden for centuries. They have access to Isu technology that predicts catastrophic events. They literally had the same information Desmond had about the solar flare. The infrastructure, the motive, and the knowledge were all there. But here's where it gets complicated. Desmond Miles sacrificed his life to activate Isu towers that shielded Earth from the 2012 flare. The catastrophe was averted. If the Templars had bunker plans, they became irrelevant the moment Desmond touched that pedestal. And that's exactly what makes this theory so unsettling, because it means the Templars were betting against Desmond. Every roadblock Abstergo threw at the assassins, every kidnapping, every double agent, it wasn't just about controlling the pieces of Eden, it was about making sure nobody prevented the extinction event they were counting on. If this theory holds, then the entire Desmond saga wasn't just a race to save humanity. It was a race against an organization that had already written off 7 billion people and was waiting for the clock to run out. Nobody at Ubisoft has confirmed this. The evidence is circumstantial, pulled from Abstergo's documented resources, their bunker-like facility designs, and Templar ideology taken to its absolute extreme. But it keeps resurfacing because it answers a question the games never fully addressed. If the Templars knew about 2012, what was their actual contingency plan? The games gave us Desmond's answer. This theory suggests the Templars had their own, and theirs involved letting the world burn. That's what makes it the most insane theory on this entire list. Not because it's the most supported, but because the franchise built a world where it's not impossible. Every vault, every piece of Eden, every shadow corporation pulling strings behind governments, it all points to an organization that would absolutely make that call if it meant permanent dominion over whatever was left. Some theories make you rethink a game. This one makes you rethink the entire franchise. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.